Gary Becker, an American economist graduating from the University of Chicago in 1955 with his PhD, was a landmark economist, winning the Nobel Prize in 1992 for having extended the domain of microeconomic analysis to a wide range of human behavior and interaction, including non-market behavior. He was a Presidential Medal of Freedom winner in 2007, and in 2011 he was voted as America's favorite economist over the age of 60. But who was he, and what was the work that he did on a day-to-day basis that led him to this point? Gary Becker arrived on the scene with a splash. His 1955 dissertation at the University of Chicago, entitled "The Economics of Racial Discrimination," challenged Marxist ideals that had been held for years. Instead of accepting the status quo ideal that Marcus established in one of his works, he instead challenged that discrimination does not lead to a positive outcome for the discriminator. Instead, he argued that discrimination led to negative outcomes for all involved because they are losing out on productivity outcomes and hiring less eligible workers than they would otherwise. This idea at the time was quite controversial, and the beginning of his career was marred in controversy, as many economists revolted and said that his ideas were far-flung and had no backing. In general, his theory was centered around the idea that more competition leads to less discrimination leading to more productivity and better outcomes in markets. In 1964, he began on a work that he's most commonly known for today, with a book titled Human Capital. His research, instead of focusing on money markets or financial markets, instead considered humans as an investment. He argued that education is an investment into a human being, and that we can increase human capital, making the world a better place. Much of his work was focused on increasing the productivity and the happiness and utility of the world. He considered people a form of investment, and that rational benefits and costs were going to exist in this market much like they would in financial markets. There would also be a return on investment much like in financial markets. An easy way to view this is going to be through the lens of education, where a child is sent to school, paid for by tax dollars, and that is an investment placed in that child. The cost of this is obviously the taxes heading towards the school, but the benefit is the education the child receives. He argues that in order for human capital to increase, that these benefits must outweigh the costs associated with it. Becker's research also went into the realm of crime, where he looked at and studied the costs and benefits associated with crimes for criminals. He viewed it as a moral and ethical constraint placed on their utility function that would show their propensity to commit crimes. The basic argument here is that criminals not having the same moral and ethical constraints inherent in themselves are more likely to commit crimes because of these lacks of constraints. In other words, the benefit of committing a crime for a criminal outweighs the cost of committing one. This differs slightly from Jeremy Beckham's rational choice theory, as he views it as impossible to eradicate crime. He believes that at any point and at any level, crime will exist in a society. Simply put, that as we diminish crime, it will become harder and harder to fight crime. So, for instance, if 15% of the population was criminal, it is incredibly easy to fight crime. As it goes to 5%, it becomes more difficult. As it goes to 3%, becoming more difficult. He views it as this because of the inherent moral constraints that human beings have, and that of the psychology involved in committing a crime. The 3% representing the most hardened of criminals, who view the benefit of committing a crime far greater than the cost of committing one. Some consider Becker's work to lead to minimizing costly surveillance, such as the police force, and maximizing fines, causing it to become the most costly for people to commit crimes. This is a rational and natural addition to his work, but Becker himself never argued this, that we should maximize fines and minimize costly surveillance in order to have the optimal public policy. More than anything else, Gary Becker was a flawed man who tried to do right at every instance that he could. Most of his work at the University of Chicago led to groundbreaking research, and it is now looked upon as seminal work in his field. The things that he himself, in some of the last remarks that he made in life, that he will always remember, were the things that he did for the human race. Gary Becker, until the last year that he was teaching, taught a principles of economics course, whether it be macro or micro, to a group of young economists at the University of Chicago, imprinting on them the importance of economics and the work that he thought was the highest in the world. He wrote articles about organ markets, calling for a competitive market to be established for organs, where people can buy and sell their organs with government regulation. He was a founder of the TGG Group, an think tank that works with philanthropies all across the world, harnessing data science and searching for causation instead of just basic correlation. He wrote a monthly column for Business Weeks from the year of 1985 to 2004, explaining his economic thoughts, principles, and ideals and his political views. He later went on to write an alternating column with liberal Princeton economist Alan Blinder, a dear friend of his, where they would discuss the same topic in bi-weekly segments, one from a Republican or conservative perspective, the other from a liberal perspective. He finally wrote a blog with Richard Posner, covering a multitude of topics considered important in the economic field, imprinting on thousands and giving a lasting resource to many. Gary Becker viewed his greatest work as increasing the human capital of this world, which he did.